Am I about to piss people off?
Don't tell me you're going to talk about hi-fi cables, are you?
No. I'm going to talk about how digital can sound as good as analog.
Yeah, we're
totally elitist. You feel like the unappreciated scholars, so you shit on the people who know less than you.
Yes.
Is analog music always better than digital? No, it's not. In fact, with the right equipment, digital audio can sound very, very similar to analog music. So I'm here to share 3 things that can make digital music sound much more like analog. So stick around. So before we get to those 3 elements, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. To get good digital sound requires a quality DAC. The second element I want to get out of the way is the biggest distraction, which is the sampling rate and the bit depth. So the sampling rate refers to the number of samples taken per second. So while bit depth refers to the number of bits that are used to represent each of these samples. The higher your sampling rate, the higher the bit depth, the more information can be found in the sound wave. So why is this a distraction? Even with the highest sampling rate and highest bit depth, music can still sound digital and sometimes just plain bad if there's noise that is introduced into the sound wave on its journey through your system all the way to the speakers. As long as you have 16-bit, 44 kilohertz sampling rate, don't worry about it. There are other things that matter much more than the sampling rate and the bit depth. The clock that your DAC uses to convert those ones and zeros into an analog sound wave. So like analog music, speed and timing matters. To explain and simplify the role of the clock, let's interpret this in parallel to a turntable. No, turntables don't have clocks. Don't worry, hear me out. Analog sources have a significant advantage in the physical nature of their media. The platter that's spinning is spinning at a speed that, as long as it's matched to what the record was designed for, this ensures that the sound wave is always produced with timing and accuracy by the stylus running through the grooves of the record. So the clock in digital to analog conversion also plays a critical and somewhat similar role in timing and accuracy. However, like the physical media itself, I get it, not everything is created equal. Some factors can impact the clock's performance, such as the quality of the clock's components, the power supply that's used, and the isolation of this clock from other noisy parts in the conversion process, or even bad current. Just as a turntable's motor can cause vibrations that affect the sound. And to address this, high-end turntables with the use of belt drives with isolated motors that eliminate platter vibrations. Similarly, an isolated clock that uses a high-quality power supply that could be completely isolated from the circuitry of the DAC can result in a much better timing and accuracy in the conversion process between those ones and zeros and an analog sound wave, resulting in a cleaner, artifact-free, and much more natural sound similar to analog. So what are your options in terms of these clocks? A good DAC. You buy a DAC that has an external clock input. That's right. And then you can simply use an external clock, which you can acquire from various companies out there that make hi-fi clocks. In my case, I use an upgraded Musical Paradise DAC, the MPD2 MK3 Deluxe. When I saw that the same manufacturer was producing an external clock that was battery powered for under $200, whoa, I had to try it. And it improves several aspects of the sound. So the transparency, sense of effortlessness in the music that was being presented in the air all around me and through the soundstage, the decay of the instruments became so much more natural and lifelike that you could feel the reverb and spaciousness in the room get larger and deeper. The timbre of the instruments even felt more convincing to me. And the increase in micro detail, which sometimes could lead to fatigue, in this case, also came with a much greater sense of smoothness and liquidity in the details. So it reduced listening fatigue. So a fun fact, when I use the Puritan PSM 156, the effect that the clock has is significantly more than when I plug my DAC directly into the wall. Yes, it did. So use tubes. If you don't care about tubes, just skip ahead. Use tube in your system somewhere because tubes add a touch of harmonic distortion. And harmonic distortion is very much present in analog playback. And harmonic distortion in hi-fi music can be a very good thing. It adds characteristics to the sound such as warmth, richness. The key, however, is to not add too much of it. So what are your options? Well, you can use a DAC that has a tube output stage. You can introduce an external tube buffer between your DAC and your preamp. When it comes to tube buffers, careful, because this is a tube buffer and it makes everything sound horrible. This is a tube buffer. Or having a tube amp, a tube preamp also can help on this end. And this is where tube rolling allows you to refine this harmonic distortion to your taste.
As long as there's digital, there will be digititis. You may be familiar with it if you're old enough to come from an analog background, or be oblivious to it if you're not. The less you have of it, the better your music is going to sound. It comes from the digital mastering process and associated software, from hardware like DACs and computers in many forms, not the least of which is jitter.
Creates a type of listening fatigue. And I don't mean a listening fatigue caused by a lack of tonal balance, which often makes the highs and details feel aggressive to our ears. No, this fatigue comes from that constant reminder that the instruments feel forced with a little bit of a noise around them. Almost has a slight glary effect, or feels like the sound is wrapped in a very, very light aluminum foil. It's also a sense I find that vinyl with a quality record gets it right. The sense of relaxed, effortless, fluid, and liquidity in the sound is what makes high quality analog playback so engaging and pleasant to listen to, even though the room is filled with cracks and pops. Well, there's a pill for it. Not just any pill, but these are pills made by Decware. That same company that makes tube amplifiers that are in such demand that there is a waiting list of over a year to obtain these amplifiers. Yes, that Decware. So these pills are the easiest things to swallow in your system. You just need 2 pairs of interconnects, called output from your DAC into these pills, and the second set of interconnect go from these pills to your preamp or your integrated amp. It's that simple. I was hearing that digital effect almost like a glare at times. And this was even obvious when I was comparing multiple DACs, like the Denifert DACs to the Gustard DACs. When I stopped using the pills and listened to all these DACs on their own, I realized how much all of those DACs were giving off this digititis. But it's interesting because until you've experienced these sources without digititis, you don't know. I didn't know. But then when I plugged the pills in, oh, you can't unhear it anymore. No more glare, just smooth, fluids, dense, and mostly relaxed musical sound. Just like good analog music. And I now can't live without them. So what are your options? You can buy the pills directly from Decware. There's a gold one for low to mid-fi setups, and there's a silver one for a high-end and very transparent and very fast setups. So fun fact, and this one's for the analog purists, when you have a bad sounding record, mostly the modern ones I guess that would be made from bad digital masters, when you put this pill between your phono stage and your preamp, oh, even that sounds better. Because these pills completely flatten out the noise that can be created from the actual mastering process as well. So if you want to know more about these pills, I'll put the link to Decware's website down in the description. And Steve does a fantastic job explaining how all these work. So do I think that this is the solution to beat all analog rigs? Hell no. I think nothing really beats a refined and well-built hi-fi analog rig, especially if you're using quality records, quality pressings. But if you don't want to start that long journey, trust me, it's a long one. Turntable, tone arm, cartridge, cables, platters, platter clamps, type of records, quality pressings, bad quality pressings, cleaning your records. Let's keep going. Phono stage, parts in the phono stage, power supply of the phono stage. That's just for the source. Then there's 3 things that help close the gap of performance, engagement, and feel of the music between the digital sound that you have today and the sound of that glorious analog rig. So each of these 3 things all help on their own, but their impacts will vary based on your system. What that really means is if downstream of these components, you have a component that introduces a ton of noise and thus colors the sound, it can negate a lot of the benefits that these 3 elements are bringing. When I match all 3 of these together in the system, that's where the goosebumps, the grin, and the childhood nostalgia returns with all the music. What about you? Got any tricks? Which of the 3 things I mentioned now in this video today that you'd be curious to try? Or you disagree? Put in the comments below and tell me why.
Hey, you bunch of hi-fi dumbasses. Today's sponsor is Hifi Shine by AC Sparkle. Brings clean power to all your cables, power lines, and tastes good on fries. Make sure you consult a professional before using it, because I just made it in the garage with my wife, using science.